If you enjoy learning about history and want to hear more amazing stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for future episodes. Part 1. The Rise of the Sassanian Empire, Ardashir I to Shapur I. The story of the Sassanian Empire begins in the early 3rd century CE, in a world where ancient Persia had already seen the rise and fall of great dynasties. The Achaemenids had once built one of the largest empires in the ancient world, only to be conquered by Alexander the Great. The Seleucid Greeks had ruled parts of Persia afterward, followed by the Parthian Arsacid dynasty. Yet by the early 200 SCE, the Parthians were weakened by internal strife and constant wars with Rome. It was in this setting that a new dynasty emerged, one that would rule for more than 4 centuries, leave an everlasting cultural legacy, and fight some of the most decisive battles of late antiquity. This was the Sassanian dynasty. The founder of the dynasty was Ardashir I. He was originally the ruler of a small region in Persis, Fars, a land that was once the heartland of the Achaemenid kings. Ardashir's father, Papak, was a local ruler connected to a line of Zoroastrian priests, claiming descent from Sassan, a revered figure who gave his name to the dynasty. Ambitious and determined, Ardashir expanded his domain steadily. By 224 CE, he confronted the last Parthian king Artabanus IV at the Battle of Hormozgan. The battle ended in Ardashir's victory, and with Artabanus dead, the Parthian dynasty collapsed. Ardashir declared himself King of Kings of Iran, reviving the old Achaemenid-style title, and began to unify the Iranian plateau under his new dynasty. Ardashir sought to centralize authority, strengthening the monarchy and reducing the autonomy of local nobles. He revived Zoroastrianism as the official religion of the empire, building fire temples and organizing the priesthood under royal authority. This alliance between monarchy and religion became one of the hallmarks of the Sassanian state. After Ardashir's death in 242 CE, his son Shapur I inherited the throne and elevated the Sassanian Empire to one of the superpowers of the ancient world. Shapur was not only a skillful ruler but also a formidable general. He waged wars against the Roman Empire, which was Persia's greatest rival. In a series of campaigns, Shapur inflicted heavy defeats on the Romans. His most famous victory came in 260 CE at the Battle of Edessa, where the Roman Emperor Valerian himself was captured alive by the Persians, the only Roman emperor in history to suffer such a fate. According to Persian reliefs carved into stone, Valerian was humiliated by being made to kneel before Shapur. This victory made Shapur legendary and demonstrated the might of the new empire. But Shapur was not only a conqueror, he encouraged science, philosophy, and culture. He welcomed Greek philosophers and Indian scholars to his court. He ordered the construction of grand cities like Gundashapur, which later became famous as a center of learning, medicine, and philosophy. His reign blended military glory with cultural achievements, securing the Sassanian Empire's place as a successor to the great traditions of ancient Persia. Part 2. From Shapur I to the Era of Stability. After the reign of Shapur I, the Sassanian Empire entered a period of both internal challenges and cautious stability. Shapur's successors inherited a vast realm that stretched from Mesopotamia to Central Asia, and from the Persian Gulf to Armenia. Yet maintaining such an empire was no easy task. Hormizd I and Bahram I Hormizd I ruled only briefly, 272–273 CE. Despite his short reign, he continued his father's policies, maintaining relations with Rome while strengthening the empire's internal administration. He was succeeded by his brother Bahram I, who faced significant religious tensions. During Bahram's reign, the influence of the Zoroastrian priest Kartir rose dramatically. Kartir promoted Orthodox Zoroastrianism and suppressed rival faiths, including early Christians, Manichaeans, and other sects. The famous prophet Mani, founder of Manichaeism, was executed during this time, marking a turning point in the empire's religious policy. Bahram II and foreign pressures. Bahram IV's son, Bahram II, inherited the throne in 276 CE. His reign was marked by conflicts with Rome, internal rebellions, and challenges to Sassanian authority. The Romans, under Emperor Carus, launched a campaign deep into Mesopotamia. Although Carus died mysteriously during the campaign, Rome's incursions showed the vulnerability of the empire. Bahram also faced challenges from within, including a rebellion in Sakistan, Sistan, and tensions with powerful nobles. Despite these difficulties, Bahram's reign produced impressive rock reliefs that depicted him alongside his family, symbolizing the prestige of the monarchy, Narseh and renewed war with Rome. Bahram II was succeeded by his son Bahram III, but his reign lasted only a few months before being replaced by Narseh, a seasoned prince and governor. Narseh sought to restore Sassanian power and launched a major war against Rome in 296 CE. At first, Narseh achieved victories, but in 298 CE he was decisively defeated by the Romans under Emperor Diocletian and his general Galerius. The resulting treaty forced the Sassanians to cede significant territories in Mesopotamia and Armenia to Rome. This was one of the most humiliating defeats in early Sassanian history, and it demonstrated that the balance of power between Persia and Rome was far from settled. Narseh was succeeded by Hormizd II, 302–309 CE. His reign was relatively short and turbulent. After his death, the succession crisis left the empire vulnerable. The nobles and clergy eventually placed his unborn son on the throne, and when the child was born, he became Shapur II. Known as Shapur the Great, he would go on to reign for 70 years, 309–379 CE, the longest reign of any monarch in Persian history. Shapur II's reign marked a turning point for the Sassanian Empire. Growing up under the guardianship of the nobles, Shapur eventually asserted his authority and became one of the most powerful kings of the dynasty. He waged a series of campaigns against the Arabs who had raided Persian territory, pushing deep into Arabia and earning the nickname Shapur, with the shoulders pierced by arrows. Shapur II also launched wars against Rome. Initially his campaigns were difficult, but over time he achieved notable successes. The most famous conflict was with Emperor Julian, known as Julian the Apostate, who invaded Persia in 363 CE. Julian advanced rapidly into Mesopotamia but was eventually trapped in hostile territory. He died in battle, and his successor Jovian was forced to sign a humiliating peace treaty, surrendering Roman territories east of the Tigris to Persia. This restored the lands lost in Narseh's time, and secured Shapur II's legacy as a great conqueror. Cultural and religious developments. During Shapur II's reign, Zoroastrianism was further institutionalized as the state religion. At the same time, Christians within the empire faced periodic persecution, especially during times of war with Rome, which had adopted Christianity as its official religion. Despite this, many Christian communities persisted in Mesopotamia and Persia. Shapur II also strengthened the empire's economy, reformed taxation, and secured the borders. By the time of his death in 379 CE, the Sassanian Empire had regained its strength and was recognized as Rome's equal in power.
The Sassanian Empire should have been magnificent. For centuries, it stood as a mighty rival to Rome, a beacon of Persian power and culture. Think of it as a sprawling, glittering tapestry, woven with threads of gold and silk. Yet, by the 5th century, that tapestry was starting to fray badly at the edges. The long and powerful reign of Shapur II had left a formidable legacy, but his successors found his shoes far too large to fill. What followed was a messy, chaotic period. Imagine a royal court filled not with wise advisors, but with scheming nobles and powerful priests, all whispering in the shadows and jostling for influence. The throne became something of a revolving door for kings. The empire was less a unified state and more a patchwork of competing interests. This internal weakness was a dinner invitation to its enemies. In the east, the Hephthalites, often called the White Huns, began to press on the borders, launching devastating raids. Khosrow's father, Kavad I, was a king who had a rather complicated relationship with the Mazdakite rebellion. At first, he saw it as a useful tool. Think of it as a king using a wildfire to clear away the dense, overgrown forest of the arrogant nobility. By supporting the Mazdakites, Kavad managed to weaken the great landowning families and the powerful clergy. The Mazdakite movement grew far beyond Kavad's control, threatening the entire social order, including the monarchy itself. Realizing his dangerous predicament, Kavad switched tactics. This is where his son Khosrow enters in dramatic fashion. Khosrow, shrewd and decisive, saw the Mazdakites as a mortal threat. He convinced his father the movement must be crushed completely if the empire was to survive. The crackdown was brutal and swift. In a move of staggering ruthlessness, Khosrow is said to have invited Mazdak and his key followers to a grand banquet. It was a trap. Once the leaders were assembled, Khosrow's soldiers slaughtered them without mercy. He had the leaders buried alive in a garden, then forced the aging Mazdak to witness his garden before executing him as well. This single, bloody act announced Khosrow's arrival on the political stage. He was not a man to be trifled with. He had demonstrated he possessed the necessary steel to restore order, no matter the cost. When Khosrow finally ascended in 531, he inherited an empire scarred but strengthened by turmoil. The old, overmighty noble families had been shattered by the Mazdakite uprising and finished off by his purge. The path was clear for him to rebuild the Sassanian state from the ground up, not on the old rickety foundations, but on a new model of his own design. He wasn't just another king. He was a reformer, a man with a vision. He had learned a critical lesson from the chaos. An empire could not survive if it was fundamentally unjust. His reign would be dedicated to ensuring it never reached that breaking point again. With the internal threats neutralized, Khosrow I Anushirvan, the immortal soul, turned his brilliant mind to the very structure of the state. He knew that military might alone was not enough. A great empire needed a fair and efficient administration. His first target was the tax system. It was, to put it mildly, a complete mess. Before his reforms, taxes were unpredictable. He ordered a comprehensive survey of all the agricultural land in the empire. Think of it as a Persian Domesday Book. Taxes were then set as a fixed payment based on the land's average productivity, not the actual fluctuating annual yield. For the first time, peasants and landowners knew exactly what they owed each year, allowing them to plan and invest. It also provided the state with a stable, predictable income, essential for funding ambitious projects, from building cities to paying the army. Next, Khosrow tackled the military. The old system was dangerously flawed. The army had been a feudal levy, raised and equipped by great nobles. This meant loyalty was often to aristocratic commanders, not to the king, and mobilization was slow. Khosrow wanted a professional army, loyal only to the throne. He created a new class of warriors known as the Daikons, minor nobles who were given land by the state in return for military service. They were paid, equipped, and trained by the central government, ensuring their primary allegiance was to the King of Kings. To manage this new force, Khosrow divided the empire into 4 military quadrants: north, south, east, and west, each under a general, a spabed, who answered directly to him. This reorganization made the Sassanian army more professional, more responsive, and far more loyal. Khosrow had effectively broken the military monopoly of the great nobles and created a formidable force that was entirely his own. The empire could now mobilize quickly and project power across many fronts. With a full treasury and a newly reformed army, Khosrow was ready to project Persian power far beyond its borders. His principal rival, the Byzantine Empire, centered on Constantinople. The so-called Eternal Peace Treaty proved to be anything but. In 540, Khosrow launched a massive invasion of Byzantine Syria. A stunning success. The ultimate prize was Antioch. Its capture was a massive military and psychological blow to the Byzantines. Khosrow deported skilled citizens to Persia and resettled them near Ctesiphon in a new city cheekily called Khosrow's Better Antioch. To the east, he dealt decisively with the Hephthalite threat by allying with the Gokturks in a pincer attack that crushed the Hephthalite Empire and secured Persia's eastern frontier. This expanded influence into lands that would one day become Afghanistan and Uzbekistan, strengthening control of the Silk Road. He campaigned in the north, the volatile Caucasus, bringing Armenia and Lazica under tighter Sassanian influence. These campaigns secured the empire's economic lifelines, not merely territory. Khosrow's ambition went beyond war. His court at Ctesiphon and the Academy of Shapur became vibrant hubs of learning. Greek, Syriac, and Sanskrit works were translated into Pahlavi. Medical, philosophical, and astronomical texts flowed into Persian scholarship. Legends say chess arrived from India and delighted Khosrow's court. His vizier Bazorgmer solved puzzles and exchanged games across empires. Shapur pioneered medical teaching and scholarship that would influence later Islamic hospitals. Medicine, astronomy, and philosophy flourished. Khosrow cultivated an image and a practice of justice. The famous chain of justice and stories of him conserving a widow's tiny plot as a moral exemplar. When Khosrow died in 579 after nearly half a century, he left an empire stable, prosperous, secure, a superpower from Constantinople to China. His tax and military reforms and his patronage of learning created a model later studied by the early Islamic rulers. His reign remains the undisputed golden age of the Sassanian Empire. Khosrow I, Anushirvan, the Just.
After the death of Khosrow II Anushirvan in 579 CE, his reforms had left the empire strong, but the stability did not last. His son, Hormizd IV, ruled until 590 CE, but his reign was troubled by conflicts with the nobility and clergy, as well as wars with the Byzantines. Eventually, Hormizd was overthrown in a palace coup, and his son, Khosrow II Parviz, came to the throne. At first, Khosrow II's position was insecure. A usurper named Bahram Choban, a brilliant general, rebelled and took control of the throne. Khosrow fled to the Byzantine court, where Emperor Maurice agreed to help him regain power. With Byzantine military support, Khosrow returned to Persia, defeated Bahram Choban, and was restored to the throne in 591 CE. In gratitude, Khosrow ceded several frontier territories to the Byzantines. For a time, relations between the two empires were relatively peaceful. However, this peace did not last long. In 602 CE, Emperor Maurice of Byzantium was murdered in a coup, and the usurper Phocas seized the throne. Khosrow II used this as a pretext to launch a massive war against Byzantium, claiming to avenge his ally Maurice. What began as a limited campaign soon turned into one of the most destructive wars of late antiquity. The Persian army swept through Byzantine territory with astonishing success. They captured Dara, a key fortress in Mesopotamia, and advanced deep into the Levant. By 611 CE, they had taken Antioch once again. Soon after, Persian forces occupied Damascus, Jerusalem, and Egypt. The capture of Jerusalem in 614 CE was especially symbolic, as the Persians carried away the true cross, a relic sacred to Christians, to Ctesiphon. At its height, the Sassanian Empire under Khosrow II controlled vast territories, stretching from Persia through Mesopotamia, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and even parts of Anatolia. For a brief moment, it seemed as if the ancient Persian dream of restoring Achaemenid grandeur had been fulfilled. The fall of the Sassanian Empire. After the dramatic downfall of Khosrow II and the chaos that followed, the Sassanian throne became unstable. In just a few years, more than 10 different rulers rose and fell, each backed by different factions of nobles, generals, or priests. The central authority that had once been the backbone of the empire was broken. By the time Yazdegerd III, the last Sassanian king, ascended the throne in 632 CE, the empire was deeply fragmented and weakened. The rise of a new power, the Arab Muslims. At the same moment that Persia was collapsing from within, a new power was rising from the Arabian Peninsula. The followers of Islam, united under the leadership of the Prophet Muhammad and later his successors, the caliphs, rapidly expanded their influence. By the time of Yazdegerd III's accession, Muslim armies were already launching raids into Sassanian and Byzantine territories. The Persians initially underestimated these new foes, viewing them as desert tribes with little military sophistication, but the Muslims were highly motivated, disciplined, and strengthened by a unifying faith. One of the decisive confrontations came in 636 CE at the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, fought in Mesopotamia near modern-day Iraq. The Persian army, commanded by the experienced general Rostam Farrukhzad, faced the Muslim forces led by Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. The battle lasted several days and was fiercely contested. Despite the Persians' use of war elephants and their larger numbers, the Muslims eventually outmaneuvered them. Rostam himself was killed in battle, and the Persian army collapsed. With this defeat, the gateway to Mesopotamia was open, and soon after the Muslims captured Ctesiphon, the Sassanian capital. The treasures of the Persian kings, including the fabled jewel-encrusted throne, fell into Arab hands. Although the Sassanians attempted to regroup, their efforts were in vain. In 642 CE at the Battle of Nahavand, the Persian forces made a final attempt to halt the Muslim advance. Known later as the Victory of Victories for the Arabs, the battle ended in a decisive defeat for the Sassanians. After Nahavand, the empire effectively ceased to exist as a unified state. Yazdegerd III fled eastward, moving from one province to another hoping to rally support. He sought refuge in Persia's eastern regions, including Khorasan and Central Asia. But local governors and nobles, exhausted by years of war and unwilling to resist the Arabs, gave him little aid. In 651 CE, while in the city of Merv, Yazdegerd was betrayed and killed, either by a local miller or by conspirators seeking favor with the new conquerors. His death marked the official end of the Sassanian dynasty, which had ruled Persia for over 4 centuries. Although the empire fell, the legacy of the Sassanians lived on. Their administrative systems, culture, and art deeply influenced the Islamic caliphate that succeeded them. Persian officials, scribes, and scholars continued to serve under the new rulers, carrying forward the traditions of governance and learning. The architectural styles of fire temples influenced the design of early mosques. Persian literature and storytelling shaped Islamic culture, while the memory of kings like Khosrow the Anushirvan remained alive in works such as Ferdowsi's Shahnameh. The Sassanians had stood as one of the 2 great powers of late antiquity, rivaling Rome and Byzantium. Their fall was not merely the collapse of a dynasty, but the end of an era in world history, marking the transition from the classical age to the early Islamic period. Thank you for listening to the story of the Sassanian Empire. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories from the past.